gangland enforcer, I know. What we do over at Queen Mary on the history side is the ultra-contemporary history, and what we focus on is the government. And this has been going on for 25, 30 years or more now. And we look at prime ministers, processes, personality, how the whole mess of government works. And we do that on our courses, Cabinet Premiership, each Prime Minister since 1945, our new groundbreaking first course in the country to treat Tony Blair as history. And what we do is we invite in people like Professor Sir Michael Barber, who's head of the Prime Minister's Delivery Unit, to come and talk to our students and talk about how things actually work. Not how they should work, how they actually work, the mess of it all and whatever. And from this teaching, we also created back in 2003 our Mile End group, which was just to begin with a postgraduate unit for people to come and just have a chat about what they were doing. But what was interesting was that from the very early days, there were several things that I was very keen on. I mean, my background, I did 5 years in investment banking at JP Morgan and Hambros Bank. I worked in the Cabinet Office for a bit. So when we created this group, I tried to make it that it would start at about 6:30 in the evening. That sounds very simple. But the point was that most, or I wouldn't say most, a great deal of academic seminars started about 4, 5 o'clock. People from business can't actually get there, you know. And so what we were doing from the very start was trying to get people in, trying to get a different kind of makeup of the crowd. And from this, something really interesting happened, and it happened slowly, so we didn't recognise what was going on at the start. The company EDS, Electronic Data Systems, was started up by Ross Perot, some of you might have heard of him, a multi-billion-pound IT outsourcing firm, asked us if they could sponsor us. Now, you know, being a good East Ender and very good on negotiating, I immediately said no. I mean, why? Well, what do you want? Why? I spoke to a few people at Queen Mary who, I mean, my point was, well, why would they want to sponsor a history department? I haven't heard of history departments being sponsored before, not from a commercial point of view. And so and people said, well, we can't see a downside. So they started to give us 200 quid for our seminars, just to pay for the drinks. And all that they asked for was a thank you at the beginning. Now, there was a lot of sort of like pensive looks, you know, what are they, why? And they started to bring along their people to it. And what was happening was, they were starting to realise that we were bringing the corporate memory of the hollowed out state. That the outsourcing industry that is gradually, well, it's 6% of gross domestic product now. We were providing what civil servants used to do in the old days. And so what we now have is we have £100,000 sponsorship from EDS, who are now Hewlett-Packard. We get 10,000 from Tribal Consulting. British Aerospace are sponsoring some of our history PhDs on how Polaris works. Why? Because they want to know how to build the next generation. So what I'd like to leave you with is the idea that, you know, a very organic creation has meant that we are right in the middle of this new outsourced world. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Lovely. Okay, thank you very much. We've looked at globalisation, data security, problems of regulation, lots of interconnections there, and I'm sure all our speakers will be chipping in to look at questions. I'd like to throw things open to the floor and see what people could like to ask questions. We got Evelyn.
Hi, I'm Evelyn Welsh, Dean of the Arts Faculty. I'd like to ask you to reflect on the concept of how you construct a sense of trust, either in the memory that you're creating, or if you're in the quality of the work that you're, in the employees that you're outsourcing to, or in the notion that Web 2 will be with us in 300 years, and therefore if we upload our photographs today, our ancestors will be able to make them available to historians in our equivalent of the Middle Ages there in the future.
Yes, it's been a big concern of governments about trust. How can we encourage people to use the internet? How can people learn to trust it? But, I mean, we have an amazing level of trust in that environment, and what we're interested in is how real that trust, how solid that trust should be because of the infrastructure that delivers it. And I think that is a serious concern, that the infrastructure, the cloud sounds like a robust model because of the multiplicity and the global sense of it. But of course, it's dependent on pipes, and computers and physical things that are highly vulnerable to damage. So I think we do have an issue about to what extent can governments, through traditional public records or public archives, to what extent can they try and maintain a national history or a national archive of results? I don't think it's clear how this is going to be achieved at the moment. Regulation does try and divide up the world, not just on a nation-state basis, but on a regional basis. But at the moment, we haven't really got any international solutions.
Maybe a slightly different take, but I think the sort of first point and the last point is that trust takes a tremendous amount of work. I've dealt with multi-billion-pound contracts where the incentive structures that are built into them actually create mistrust. This government is an absolute master at undermining the confidence that you need to build between people. Imagine a key part of your entire business process is provided by somebody else at a distance that you've never met before. What's absolutely vital is that all of the social things that people take for granted, all of the cultural things, all of the little things don't get in the way. You only have to watch a soap opera to find, on the television, to find that it's the small things that people will focus on, and they'll suddenly decide they don't like somebody. And if you don't like somebody, you won't work with them. I remember one wonderful moment where we sat with a very large consultancy organization where we were the outsourcer, and one of our executive directors said, I think we're missing each other here. The problem we've got is that our people hate yours, right? Now this really happens in real life. The people stuff really gets in the way and requires an enormous amount of time and effort. In the corporate world, I think HR departments are largely used for hiring and firing. In the relationship between organizations and institutions, I think there's a massive gap. One of the things which I know is a political issue at the moment is if you look at the reform of government and how you build trust, not only in things like expenses, but how you build trust between the departments of government and each other. There's a thing called the services-oriented architecture, which is being developed in the cloud computing space. There's a thing called the G-Cloud, which is in the process of being developed. That requires all the processes within government to be thought through again, and all these people issues. It's not just, if you get a bunch of technologists to sit down and talk about technology, they'll come up with a great technological solution. But then the impact on people tends to be forgotten. And that is a matter of active concern at the moment. I'm very interested in the relationship with government, because I know that the shadow cabinet is looking at this as a governance issue, because effectively departmental lack of control in government means that, if you look at outsourcing between government and other departments, you look at interrelationships between departments, this failure of trust is at the core not only of the voter vis-a-vis government,